Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Citizen Representatives Podcast. My name is Tyler. I'm here with my friend Adam. Adam, how are you today?
Doing well, Tyler. Thank you.
So I just had a quick question. I wanted to know if you rode your bike into work today or if you drove to work and then just stopped a half block early and then rode the rest of the way so that people would think that you actually were riding your bike.
I walked barefoot to work today. How's that?
Of course, you're working from home at the moment, I believe. Is that true?
It's true. Yep. I walked to the other room, flipped on the laptop, and away I went.
Of course, I'm making fun of the Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg. They caught him on tape. Did you see this, Adam?
I did, yeah.
So this is so funny. I'm going to share my screen. They caught him on video. He was in an SUV. He had a bike rack on there. He thought he was hidden well enough, but there were some citizen journalists caught him. Let's see if we can play this.
On a bike in his suit, riding away. I didn't know he'd ride it in a suit.
So he's looking around, make sure no one can see him. I don't know if they're Secret Service, but his lackeys are helping him get the bike off. I'm not sure he could have even done that himself. Especially, he has his special helmet on, and now he's going to pedal in for the photo op to make it look like he's being really green. Of course, maybe these are all electric Suburbans right now, but I don't think that they are right now. And he's about to push off. And there he goes. Roll the cameras. Of course, this just goes to show, if there wasn't hypocrisy in Washington, D.C., I don't know that there would be any sort of values, if you can count hypocrisy as a value. So
he's highly self-important, as so many of them are.
Well, I kind of emulate him. I try to be, it doesn't work. I just don't have that in me. So in other news,
you don't like to stage. You don't like to stage your virtue.
No, the staging.
I've got a question.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I have a question about that. There are so many cameras out there now. You've got whenever you're doing anything that's a little bit. Not that there's anything horrible about this other than he's a hypocrite, but when you're doing anything these days, don't you just kind of assume, hey, there's a camera possibly watching me at this moment. If I stick my finger in my nose, there's a good chance it's going to end up on TV. If you're worth putting on TV, right? So is that true, or are we missing more of these events than we realize? Do these things go on even more ubiquitously than we can fathom? We just don't have enough cameras yet. We need more surveillance.
Well, I think we forget. People are still committing crimes, and they're in broad daylight. There are cameras everywhere. They've seen these camera things on YouTube. I've seen just in the last week, people who I follow on YouTube and watch their videos. They said, "Hey, I just got my catalytic converter stolen from me. Here, you can watch the guy on video." These things are all over the news. There are these Asian attacks all over the place, and people without any masks on going about and just beating on people for no reason other than they're Asian or whatever the reason may be, and they get caught. I don't know why people don't understand that. I don't know it. Of course, in hindsight, oh yeah, I should have should have realized that that there was a camera on me. Another one, a guy showed this lady trying to scam him for insurance purposes. He had a dash cam, and she deliberately ran into him, and they pull off to the side, and she said, you ran into me. And he says, no, I've got it on dash cam. And she didn't believe him. She kept, insisting. And then the police come. And of course, you can't dispute the video evidence. And she very quickly was being nice and all of this. And I don't know. There are cameras everywhere. It's a kind of an externalization of the book of life, right? We have the book of life is where all of everything that you ever do is documented, and now it's kind of coming to life in a real way, and with video and many other types of forms of recording. Podcasts. I mean,
where we say things that we maybe regret later. Or maybe not.
I don't know. I don't think I've regretted anything yet. I mean, there's always something that I may end up regretting. But so to follow up on something that we talked about last week, and this is kind of in the camp of people showing their hand a little bit. We have a former executive of Planned Parenthood, and she's talking about the vaccine passport. So let's take a look at this. And hopefully I don't know how YouTube and all these places, I may get my video pulled for this. And if so, I'll edit it out, and we can just kind of talk about it. But let's watch this and listen.
Clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is really narrowing. I mean, you were mentioning, Chris, about how all these states are reopening. They're reopening at 100%. And we have a very narrow window to tie reopening policy to vaccination status. Because otherwise, if everything is reopened, then what's the carrot going to be? How are we going to incentivize people to actually get the vaccine? So that's why I think the CDC and the Biden administration needs to come out a lot bolder and say, if you're vaccinated, you can do all these things. Here are all these freedoms that you have. Because otherwise, people are going to go out and enjoy these freedoms anyway. It's clear to them that the vaccine...
Okay.
Oops.
You're not supposed to say that part out loud, ma'am. I'm, of course, assuming her gender. Okay, so if we don't hurry and clamp down and tie your freedom to getting a vaccine, people are going to get wise to this and come out and enjoy their freedoms regardless of if they have the vaccine or not.
Right. Which then maybe they don't. Not everybody needs the vaccine.
I don't know. I mean, I'm told that everyone has to have the vaccine to go anywhere or do anything. And, I don't think that that's necessarily happening. Now, I'm not diminishing people's suffering here. Okay. I'm going to make some comments that hopefully I won't regret, but this pandemic has been very bad for a lot of people, but they've made it way worse than it actually is. It's, of course, a lot of people have died. Of course, a lot of people are suffering. I believe my son might have had it and is suffering from some after effects. So I'm not, like I say, I'm not diminishing the severity of individual cases of COVID. But when you look at the larger picture of what has happened with this and just the manipulation of the data, they're not telling us everything. They're hiding a lot of the results of their policies and things of that nature. That I don't think this was the best one to tie all their horses to. Now, I think a lot of these things have been pre-planned in advance. There were a lot of people who were just looking for an opportunity to increase their power and make this something that everyone would have to do. Now, of course, I personally don't know anyone. I don't know anyone personally who's died of it. That doesn't mean I don't know of people, 2 or 3 friend jumps out that have died from it. But say with the Black Plague or the Spanish flu 100 years ago, I mean, you definitely knew there were people dying everywhere. And most likely there was someone in your family who, or more than one person in your family that passed away from it. But with this, a lot of people got sick, and my mother and mother-in-law both got sick with COVID. And they had, they weren't hospitalized, but it was serious enough to, it was bad, but they're still around with us. Thank heavens. And, I don't know, did they overplay their hand here with this, Adam, or am I misreading this?
Oh, I think there were a lot of mistakes. And yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say from everything I've read and from, just observing it over the past year, I think it was overplayed. It was used to political advantage. I think when you look at it statistically, it doesn't merit the response that we did. I think our response, you can still respond and protect the vulnerable classes as best you can. I mean, imagine throwing all that money that we threw at the American citizen generally, regardless of whether you were affected or directly or not. Imagine just concentrating those funds just on supporting, people that are in that older age category or that have, severe other issues, since most deaths are due to comorbidity. And so I think we could have handled it a lot better, and we didn't need to tell stories about, and proclaim science as being definitive when clearly unscientific things were going on. So, I mean, we could talk ad nauseum about this. But to answer your question, yeah, it was overplayed. How was that?
Yep. And that's my opinion too. I think you had Texas. Was Texas the first major state to announce that they were eliminating the mask mandate?
That had one in place before, I believe so.
Okay.
Certainly most visible, but other states never, like South Dakota, they never had a mask mandate, and there are probably a few others.
Of course, Texas was called something like Neanderthal thinking, that they were ending the mask mandate. And of course, if you look at the numbers from when that was implemented to now, the cases have gone down dramatically. And if you look at this, many of the states that still have the mask mandates in, many of them, the cases are going up. So of course, there's so many different factors that go into when a case is when there's an actual case, when the severity of the cases, the hospitalizations. There's so many different things that go into that it's hard to make a direct comparison. But at least on the surface, the numbers that we're seeing, the mask mandate that Texas eliminated seems to have caused the cases, or at least helped the cases to go down. Now, we're, of course, in Utah. I'm looking forward to the time when the mask mandate in about a week is eliminated, at least for non-state related entities. I believe the governor has made an announcement that he's going to keep the mask mandate in until at least May, the end of May, for state government and state buildings. And I think that businesses may still have the option to require people to wear masks in their establishments. But as far as a mask mandate broadly, the one in our home state is being rescinded, if that's the right word. So it's very interesting. I think that the response to this COVID-19 is going to be studied for decades. A lot of policy will be based upon it. I mean, there's just so many things to learn about this, and I don't know. Was the last major. We seem to have pandemics come through every 5 to 10 years, and this seems to be the first one that I don't know why it exactly was made such a big deal about it. I think a lot of it some of it, I don't know if a lot of it, but some of it had to do with the person in the presidency at the time. It was used as a cudgel to get him to basically be voted out. I think a lot of the response and the voting that was Donald Trump, his response led to him, in many people's estimations, to be voted out. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but it's definitely a hypothesis and opinion. So very interesting. It's just too bad that we have to go through kind of the worst of things and to try to figure out what actually works. I haven't seen this in the United States, but I've seen it in Canada, and maybe I just haven't seen the stories. But Easter services are being shut down by police, and it's just very sad that so few people are willing to stand up against this. So this is Tyler. I'm here with my friend Adam. We're talking on our Citizen Representatives podcast, and I've been working on some kind of marketing things, and I want to run something by you, Adam. This is kind of the wording that I've come up with, and I'm open to tweaking. Citizen Representatives reduces corruption in politics by uniting as legal citizens by electing lawmakers with the iron-clad agreement that they will vote on bills according to a majority vote by citizens in their district or state. Those votes by verified local citizen representatives will be secured by blockchain technology similar to Bitcoin and Ethereum. Votes will be anonymous but identifiable and unhackable. And then I say, because this is some verbiage that I'm using to come up with, to make some videos. Please subscribe to our channel and so on. Am I missing something there? Is it, can I hone it down, or is this, what do you think?
No, I think it's good. I like it. I think it's only 1, 2, 3 statements, 3 sentences, which is nice and concise. So well done.
I think we're trying to figure out how all of this marketing works. The YouTube, of course, I know how YouTube works from a consumer standpoint, and I can kind of tell what I like to consume. Now, once you put out videos of your own out there, it's an eye-opening experience, because you see some people and they put out a video and it's, dumb. It's not very entertaining, and they'll get hundreds of thousands of views. And then you put out something that you think is very informative and informational and maybe entertaining. And we finally got a video that has like 15 views, and I'm so stoked about it that it's telling everyone. So of course the videos that we're putting out are over an hour long, and so part of what I think the key is to put clips out there that get people to understand the concepts and just kind of the big ideas that we're working on. Then that will allow them to say, okay, I'm willing to put in an hour and 15 minutes to look at this further. So if any of you have suggestions or helpful tips to help us along, we'd really appreciate that. Moving on to the next portion, we have this graph that I'm going to show on the screen was pretty eye-opening to me. Okay, let's pull this up. See if I can scale this right. Whoops. Sorry, I'm still a novice at this type of thing. says, and this is from, if you click on it, it's from, click on the graphic, Gallup. Trust in the media. Republicans don't really trust the media. This shows a graph going back from 2000 up until now. And it shows...
Tyler, when you play...
Go ahead.
When you play this on your screen, it's because I'm seeing it mirrored. It's reading right to left.
I don't know. I'm hoping that it, because on my screen it shows that it's the right way.
Normal.
I don't think it really matters that
Okay.
much. But I'll describe it. It goes from left to right, showing.
Wondered.
And I'll check it in post-production because I was fiddling with that setting before, and I'm not sure.
It looks like it's in Russian.
Well, it might as well be for. Anyway. Left to right, it shows trust in media, and it's a poll. The Democrats hover around the 60% line, and then in recent years, the last number is at 73%. 73% trust in media for the Democrats. The Independents is at 36%. It's a slow decline from approximately 50% down to 36%. Now, the Republicans start out at 40%. It goes up to about 50%. Right now, currently, the trust in the media from Republicans is 10%. And I'm just surprised that it's that high. I don't know who these Republicans are.
That was exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. First of all, I want to know how in the world can you have a 73% trust in the media right now with all that's going on right now? Like, you literally have to. What do you have to do to get to that point?
Well, and how are these questions being asked too? Because everybody goes to their trusted news source, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's interesting if a majority of news sources, I'm guessing the way that's being answered is a majority of Republicans are answering that as if, a majority of news outlets are just can't be trusted. Whereas Democrats are looking at it and going, as most media outlets can be trusted. And I guess that really shouldn't be surprising that it falls that way. But yeah, it had the fact that it trended differently over the past couple of years is significant. When people speak, when people tell you the things you want to hear, you trust them, right?
Yeah, that's definitely what I do. I mean, I've had arguments on Facebook, and I try to not do this, but when right before the election, it was just inevitable. People put out their opinions, and I was not alone. I put out some of my opinions, and you put out an opinion, you have to be prepared to defend it. And one of the things that a recurring theme that I got from people, and they tended to be Democrats, and I can't remember if I've talked about this before or not, but they had a big deal about their big deal was trusting the source. And of course, it's important to find out if you can trust your source. This is something that we talked about last week, and you had some good comments about it on earned and unearned authorities. Could you take just a moment and talk about that again?
Sure. Do you want me to talk about the beast aspect at all, or just generally the principle?
No, just generally.
Yeah. So, I mean, an authority, we often use these words authority, expert, and society. And I think it's fair to say that many of us, as is human nature, just give it carte blanche, like, yep, they're an expert. They must be an expert. They have a degree in this. They've been on TV saying this. They articulate themselves well, whatever. And it could be in anything. It could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be, somebody on the news, a politician. So authorities and experts are everywhere. But do we really take enough time to scrutinize that authority? Or do we just say, well, they're an authority, so they said it, must be true, must be accurate. Why would, and I think that is a real mistake. We even our trusted authorities, people that have proven themselves to be correct over a period of time, we probably grant them a little bit of leeway. We say, I want to listen to you again and hear what you have to say. But we should always be checking that. We should always be checking with other sources, and not limit ourselves to just the scope of what one expert or a group of experts might be saying. Are they actually an expert? Or, I think we give way too much power to this notion of having experts out there without really assessing what it is that they're saying, where they're getting their information from, and if it plays out in the real world. Are these things accurate when we look back over time? Is what they're saying, is that impactful? So a lot could be said there, but that's basically earned and unearned authority.
So what I got from when I was having these discussions with some of my friends and family was, like I said, they really had this big deal of making an emphasis on the source, because my deal is I look for, I can pull something that's true out of anything. And of course it'd be helpful if the point that I was trying to make would come from the New York Times or the Washington Post, because those are kind of sources that the Democrats tend to trust more. But you can get to a point where you can find truth in any reporting, regardless of the source. And that was kind of a point that I made. I start off with a baseline of not trusting what I read. I want to see a rebuttal from that, and then I'll start to look at the claims further. So this is kind of what tends to happen. The mainstream news will put out a story. We'll read something that's a rebuttal to it, and there's not often a counter rebuttal to that. And a lot of people are missing those things. They only see the main story, and then they don't hear the rest of the story. And this is something that happened. This is just, I believe 60 Minutes, don't they air on Sunday? This just came out. This was a story on Ron DeSantis. 60 Minutes kind of did a hit job on Ron DeSantis, who's the governor of Florida. He's been taking a lot of heat over his COVID response also. And I don't know why, because the way that he has done it has been head and shoulders above, the results that he's gotten has been head and shoulders above most of the other states, especially the ones like New York and Michigan and some of these states that the handling of these have just been atrocious. Now, Ron DeSantis was accused of basically a pay-for-play scheme. Publix, which is a large grocery chain in Florida, they donated $100,000 to Ron DeSantis's, one of his PACs, or it was something like that. They were basically donating to his campaign. And 60 Minutes was alleging that in exchange for that donation, Ron DeSantis gave them priority in distributing a lot of these vaccines. And so it was kind of a, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back kind of scheme. But the actual truth about that is nowhere close to that. That's just kind of a coincidence. There were several other outlets and chains who have the opportunity and had the opportunity to distribute the vaccines. And there have been several Democratic sources in Florida that have backed up Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis has said that is not how this went. 60 Minutes, what you portrayed in your story is missing 75% I'm making that number up. You're missing all of the context of what was going on at the time. You took all these things out of context, and you're making a hit. You're taking a hit out on Ron DeSantis to try to bring him down. And this is what happens all the time. This is not just a one-off. This happened with Trump. Yeah. It seemed like monthly. There was a major story that was really nothing, that the press got a hold of and tried to make something out of nothing. The whole Russia thing is, they are pushing that for four plus years, and many of them are still pushing that. When it was debunked, it was debunked a month after it came out or less. So this is something that, if you're not looking at both sides of these stories and at least getting, you see a major story come out. Okay, well, go ahead and follow that major story. Let's see what the mainstream news has to say about it. You're doing yourself and the country a tremendous disservice if you're not looking to see if there are counterpoints to that, to see if that story is actually true. Because the corrections often come not on page 1 or on the home page of these places. It comes on page 995, or it's clear on the back, and it's in small print, and you don't hear anything about it. And that's what's so harmful about what's going on nowadays. And a lot of these journalists and outlets do it on purpose. Am I mistaking that, or am I on the right track?
No, I think it's true, and I think it's come down to the point where a lot of them just don't even care about the truth. There's they repeat. If you repeat, it's called the big lie, right? If you repeat something often enough, it becomes the truth. And so just keep repeating it, just keep pounding it into people's brains. Never mind, because it only matters what our viewers are looking at, right? We know the other networks that might be reporting something differently. Their viewers are going to view something else, but we just want to reinforce it with our viewers, and it's unfortunate. It's really dishonest, and so I think we all have a responsibility to tune into other outlets from time to time to check ourselves, check the facts.
Now, of course, I talk about the story on Ron DeSantis just because it leads right into the main topic that we're going to talk about today, which is the new Georgia voting law. And if we get to it, hopefully, because it's going to affect us if it ends up being passed, is HR 1, which is a law that's, I believe it's passed the House in the House of Representatives, and it's a very scary law that are going to erode a lot of our freedoms. Okay, so let's get kind of the backstory here. 2020, the election of 2020. If you thought the election of 2020 was just so sound and just secure and just it was the best run election that you've ever seen, then I don't know. You need to take a step back. It was a disaster. We've talked about this a little bit. Long before the election, with the pretext of COVID, scheming lawyers in many states, they opened up kind of a Pandora's box of things. They loosened up some of these laws so much that it reduced the confidence in these elections by several factors. Okay, so we have, and Georgia was one of them, that there was a lot of complaints in Georgia. Of course, I think it was 2 years ago with the election of Stacey Abrams and the current governor, Brian Kemp. I think it's Brian. The Democrats alleged that Stacey Abrams was the legitimate winner of that, even though she ended up losing by some 50,000 votes. Okay, so they're pushing this narrative that the elections are not secure on the one hand, and now they come and loosen up all these elections because with with the mail-in voting, with absentee voting, with there were quite a few things that they ended up getting passed through courts. Okay, this is not the legislature. This is not the legislature necessarily that made these laws before 2020. The lawyers, they filed lawsuits to get a lot of these election laws loosened up. And of course, before we could do anything, the election was upon us. And then when it was all said and done, many of the courts said, well, it's too late now. We're not going to go back. And I think many of the courts punted on this. Okay, so that's a little bit of backstory. So the election in Georgia, which is, at least in their state government, is largely Republican. Okay, like many states, a lot of the city centers, the large cities tend to vote Democrat. But the larger state legislature is Republican. They passed what they call the Election Integrity Act of 2021. And going along with what we were talking about with the media, of course, the media misconstrued so many points and parts of this law that they are now using they're using a lot of emotional arguments against it. They're saying this is the new Jim Crow. This is, you can't now give people water where they're gonna die of thirst, and they're not really gonna die of thirst, but you can't give people water in line. They're reducing the number of hours that an election can be open, and so now the working people of Georgia can't go and vote. They don't get off work in time. So on its face, some of those things appear to be true. In reality, that's not true. Okay, let's look at the election hours. The election hours were standardized, and in most cases, in most counties, the election hours were actually extended. When they're talking about giving people water, poll workers can give water to people. They were talking about people in general just kind of electioneering in the polling stations. Okay, so you can't do that. That's actually law in several states. It's to help. So, here's a water, and it's got so and so's logo on it, or here's this, or here's that. It's kind of it's a small way to try to get people to vote your way. And of course, the Democrats, so I apologize. This is, the citizen representatives is not, the idea itself is not partisan, but we're kind of giving you ideas and things that are happening. We're trying to cut through the BS. We're trying to look at what is actually going on, what these laws are actually saying, and we're trying to cut through the emotional arguments that are trying to manipulate you. Okay, so this is I'm reading this on legalinsurrection.com. This is the new reforms according to Heritage Action include the following: protecting absentee voting by requiring voter ID, not automatically sending request forms or ballots to all registered voters, printing ballots on security papers so they can be authenticated, prohibiting ballot trafficking by political operatives, and strengthening supervision of absentee ballot drop boxes. Okay, the ballot trafficking, I think, is voter harvesting. That may be another name for that, which is where you can go to a rest home, or you can go down a street and get people to vote. You say, here, we're ballot harvesting. Have you already voted? So then they pick up those votes, and they can, there's no real chain of command between there and bringing them back. So there's a huge opportunity for fraud there. And very few people, I just don't like the idea of ballot harvesting in general. Another bullet point: promoting the integrity of the election process by prohibiting private funding of election officials and government agencies, increasing the accuracy of voter registration lists, increasing transparency by allowing election observers complete access to the election process, and requiring the ballot counting to continue without pause until all the votes have been tabulated. Okay, so there are a lot of things that they were trying to fix because of giant gaping holes in security, basically. This is something that they said there are 2 times the number of weekend voting days than in current law, okay? So they're actually, in many respects, increasing the number of days and the ability for people to vote. Up to 2 Sundays of early voting. 116 Georgia counties would have more hours of early voting. And there's more consistency across counties. Okay, so in some counties, they were closing early. And now the state has says, no, you have to, there needs to be more standardized hours across all of these counties. And so that made it so, like I say, in many of these counties, the voting hours actually went up. So, of course, they can't say that in the news. They can't accurately present what's going on. They have to misconstrue and twist some of these things to make it seem like now it's Jim Crow, which are, if you don't know what Jim Crow laws are, go look them up. It was generally in the South, and it made it harder for people of color to vote and to do a lot of things. So in response to this, not in response to the actual law, but in response to rhetoric from political operatives and from rhetoric from the White House, I almost said the White House. Now you have all these corporations who are ganging up against Georgia because they want to be on the right side. Now we've talked about this before, about sometimes it's just easier to go along with the status quo and the flow. And so, but in this case, it seemed that it looks to me that the White House was pressuring the Major League Baseball to move the All-Star game. Is that what you gathered, Adam?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, they made a statement, and Major League Baseball picked up on that statement and decided to cancel the draft and the All-Star game in Atlanta.
So Major League Baseball, which supposedly is America's pastime, in response to erroneous information given out by the White House and parroted by most of the major news outlets, said, okay, we're going to cancel. We're not going to hold the All-Star game in Georgia anymore. Not this year. Of course, they're not canceling the Braves, or I don't know what they're going to do. Do you think, Adam, that they had thought this through all the way? Because now what this does, of course, is open up any state that the All-Star game is now played in to their voter laws are going to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb. Did they think about this?
No. I mean, that was one of the first comments that I came across when I first heard about this story was, well, they'll send it to a state with even stricter laws, like, say, New York, Pennsylvania. And so I mean, where does it end? And why punish Georgia? Why punish Atlanta? I mean, it seems ridiculous. These kinds of knee-jerk reactions just seem to be commonplace, and it just opens up a whole can of worms.
It's just like they have no foresight at all. I mean, Georgia, their voting laws that they implemented are really not that drastic at all. I mean, they could have went way further, and they probably should have. To tell you the truth, there's still a lot of holes that people have pointed out in the current voting laws. And I mean, just like you're saying, now you have New York. New York has similar or greater voting restrictions than Georgia does. Delaware, of course, that's where Joe Biden's from. Joe Biden, of course, is not mentioning any of the laws from Delaware. And now the major leagues, none of the players, this is what I read. This is just kind of rumor. But reporting from a guy who's correct most of the time. He said this didn't come from the players. Okay, this was not a push by the players. I don't think the players, there are, of course, some political players. But by and large, the players, like, okay, whatever. This was by sponsors from the major leagues. So, and I think, I don't know which sponsors, they weren't specific in who those were, but this is being pushed by sponsors. And I don't know.
Well, they're overestimating their actual value, right? I mean, how many people, these all-star games have become such fluff, and it doesn't have any of the appeal that maybe the all-star games had, at least that I can see. 20, 30 years ago, they've had to pump it up with things like home run derbies and the NBA, the same for their all-star games. They've got different formats to try and attract viewers. In a year where viewership has already declined, most people can't, get into a stadium except in limited capacity. And so now you go and make a political statement like this. What are the chances that you and I, Tyler, are going to watch the All-Star game if we were before? Are we going to watch it now in any city? I don't care if it's, in my backyard. I mean, I think it's more disenfranchisement from just the average person who just doesn't want to think about politics when they go to a ball game. When they flip on the TV, they want to see their heroes hit a home run. They don't want to see, nonsense, political nonsense being propagated by these what are they? By these jackasses. Sorry.
Well, about 3 years ago, I don't know exactly how many years, I used to watch a lot of football. Now this is getting into the NFL, and they've had their own kind of controversies with woke culture. I used to watch a lot of football, and it consumed a lot of my Sundays. And I wouldn't watch as much basketball, but I would, even though that's my favorite sport to play. I cut it all out. The NFL, the NBA, the major leagues, they've all become so woke that I did watch the Super Bowl, I have to admit. I was, okay, well, whatever. But my participation in all these things has gone way down because I don't want to get a guilt trip every time I log on and watch. It's just getting old.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and there's just not a lot of the narrative from announcers and commentators. It just all falls in line, and that probably not all of them think this stuff. They just have to say it so they can keep their job. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
Which is one reason why it's important to become uncancelable. We kind of touched on this before. I don't really want to go too much into this, but build up a form of income for you that does not depend on things that you say in public. Make it so nobody knows where your money's coming from.
Yep.
Make it so that whatever you say, that it can't be held against you, other than maybe your Twitter will be suspended for a while, or your Facebook or whatever. It's just, I don't know. I don't get it. So, this is actually it's heartening maybe, but Republicans tend to just flip-flop, and not flip-flop, but they tend to fold. They get a lot of pressure from mainstream news, and they fold. Well, Trump kind of gave them the cojones to go and be a little bit stronger. And so now in Georgia, the Georgia House votes to strip Delta of $35 million tax credit for flipping on election law support. I don't know why Delta Airlines is commenting on Georgia election law. I don't know why any of these companies are. And of course, this isn't law. This would have to be passed by their Senate and signed into law. But it is at least kind of a symbolic gesture that, hey, you come against us, we're going to come back against you. And it's unfortunate that it has had to come to this point, that now we have to, everyone has to show their virtue and come out and, put their flag down, so to speak. It's just, I don't know. It's just getting crazy. So we have the Washington Post even. Now I tend to view the Washington Post with kind of a jaundiced eye. I don't believe everything that comes out of there. But when they're talking about Republicans and they show them in a good light, it's surprising, first of all. So that's not this case, but it's the kind of the same vein or same line of thinking. The Washington Post gives 4 Pinocchios to Joe Biden for what he was saying about the Georgia election bill. Okay, the Washington Post will bend over backwards to make Democrats look good and Republicans look bad. Okay, so for them to give Joe Biden 4 Pinocchios, which is the most number of Pinocchios, which is their way of saying you're lying. It's kind of a 4-star rating for lies. For them to say that to give him 4 Pinocchios is actually, it shows that it's probably true. This is one of those things that's kind of a back and forth with, okay, you have what actually came out in the Georgia bill. You have what the media said. You have what Joe Biden said. Now you have someone on your own side saying, no, that's not what actually happened. So you can be pretty sure that this is that Joe Biden's lying about this. So he was, I already mentioned this. You can't give anyone water. You can't. It just goes on and on. And
well, or people, if you don't want to listen to the Washington Post, you could just read the bill and decide for yourself. Oh yeah, that's a lie.
I'm pretty sure that it's available online. There's a PDF link. I mean, it's right there. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because it was so bad. It was such a lie that even the Washington Post had to give it 4 Pinocchios, not just 2 or 1. They had to go all in. I mean, they knew it was just that bad. So good for them. I mean, I'm glad there's some honesty out there still.
So this is a story from the Daily Wire. 75% of all U.S. voters and 69% of black voters support voter ID laws. The idea that's being pushed right now is voter ID is racist. Now, can you explain that to me, Adam? Because I don't get it.
Well, you think I get it?
Well,
the claim, I guess. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
All right. The claim is that a lot of inner city people of color, people without good economic means, they just don't have ID, and it's oppressive if it's suppressing their vote if you require an ID. Now, there are a lot of things that living in the United States require an ID. So I heard one pundit on TV the other day said, can somebody here name me just one person that doesn't have an ID? Name me one. And I think it was, I think if you ask that to the whole country, and we should clarify, one legal citizen, one citizen of the United States, is there one citizen that you can name that doesn't have an identification of some sort? Now, I'm sure there are some, but how many really? And so, again, I think this is a big lie that is pushed because, it it would seem that there are those who want to exploit this to their advantage. If you can bring anybody in off the street, you don't require an ID. That means a vote somewhere, and so yeah, this is complete nonsense. It's amazing to me that it's even an issue.
How much money have we done in stimulus in the last year? Trillions?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the first thing, right? I mean, I was thinking about that before, we got on the podcast here. I mean, I think you and I would be willing to foot the bill for those who don't have IDs. I will do GoFundMe's. I will find the money. I will give everybody in this country that's improved legal citizenship an ID tomorrow. I'll pay for it. And I thought, well, why would I do that when the government can just write a check with pretend money? And so there you go. Very, very easy solution, right? I think that's where you were going with that.
This is all just manufactured. Okay? This is manufactured outrage. When people talk about minorities who they don't have an ID, supposedly, because that's typically the way it's presented, right? They're usually not saying that white people don't have IDs. Am I mistaken in that? Because it's typically framed that minorities don't have the IDs. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, that they have to frame it that way, because then it becomes an issue of racism, and that empowers their argument, and it just plays along their typical narrative.
Of course, this plays into what they call the bigotry of the soft bigotry of low expectations, which means that, okay, I see that you have a different skin color than I do. I'm going to assume that you don't have enough money or means or intelligence to get an ID. And so I'm going to talk down to you. I'm going to make it easier for you to get ahead because I don't think that you can do it on your own. That's what they call the soft bigotry of low expectations. And that's definitely what's going on here. There was the big lawyer Elias. He put out a tweet the other day and showing that he showed a driver's license, and he said something along the lines of, there are two numbers on here. How are people supposed to know which one to put? And it was framed in racial terms. Well, one says DLNO, driver's license number, and the other was just a gibberish number at the bottom. So he's portraying this as if minorities can't figure out what their driver's license number is, because if you do an absentee ballot, now in Georgia, you have to put a driver's license number on there so that they can verify it, that you're an actual citizen and, eligible to vote. And it's just going to the idea that people want us at each other's throats, and those people are in power. They could very easily pass a law that, and maybe some states already have this, assistance for the poor to get an ID so that they can vote. There's got to be, at the very least, a charity out there that will do this for people. I mean, you have all these people registering people to vote. They can't do the same thing and go take them to get a photo ID somewhere. I mean, it's just ludicrous. The idea that we can't solve that problem, that we have to open up voting for everyone, regardless of if they can show an ID or not, and basically just crack open the voter rolls and just let anyone come in. I mean, it's maddening. Of course, they have the idea that the border is wide open now, but we have to show ID to go anywhere and do anything. I mean, just kind of the madness that's going on is very frustrating. So I'm going to show a clip. This is Charles Barkley talking about racial division. So they're doing some play-by-play. I don't know what the context is. I don't know. They may have been talking about the Georgia bill, but I don't know so I don't know the background. But what he's saying does not really need necessarily, context, because it's interesting nonetheless. And here we go.
Shared that news, how painful it was.
Yeah, but the one thing I took out of that piece was, man, I think most white people and black people are great people. I really believe that in my heart. But I think our system is set up where our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, are designed to make us not like each other so they can keep their grasp of money and power. They divide and conquer. I truly believe in my heart most white people and black people are awesome people, but we're so stupid following our politicians, whether they are Republicans or Democrats. And their only job is, hey, let's make these people not like each other. We don't live in their neighborhoods. We're all got money. Let's make the whites and blacks not like each other. Let's make rich people and poor people not like each other. Let's scramble the middle class. I truly believe that in my heart.
Shared that news.
Adam, your comments.
I love it. I love Charles. I mean, I don't always agree with him, but I love that he speaks his mind. He's not afraid to say it on a nationally televised, widely watched show. This was during the NCAA basketball tournament, the college basketball championships that were going on this past week, and and finishing up tonight, actually. But anyway, I mean, it's just such a huge platform for him to be saying that. But he says it, and he says stuff like this that goes against the grain of the typical narrative, the safe play. He's one who's not afraid of getting fired. I don't think they could afford to fire him because he is. People watch his show because it is his show. He's the bigger than life personality. I mean, but I love this about him, that he's willing to say something against the grain and say what he believes. Now, I don't know. Am I a hypocrite because I get irritated when other people speak their minds, on shows and or use their platform? And so I have to be careful there. But I think Charles, I mean, he's not afraid to say something, that's maybe right leaning or left leaning. He'll say what he thinks. And I think he's pretty consistent about that. And so kudos to him for, and I think the most warming thing about it is the sentiment that was expressed, that most white people and most black people are genuinely good people. And he really believes that. And I think that's true. That's what I feel. And we get tired of being, slandered on the basis of our skin, which is supposed to be the definition of racism, right? You're supposed to be judged based on the content of your character. And it's nice to hear a public personality getting back to and expressing that sentiment and doing so very powerfully.
Charles Barkley is he's a gem. I mean, when I was thinking about finally coming out and doing this citizen representatives idea, he was one of the people I thought, man, if he were one of the first ones to do this, that would be great. So I'm making an open invitation to Charles Barkley, if he ever hears this, that we want someone who doesn't care what the media thinks. We want someone who doesn't care what anybody thinks but the people. Okay, I think that Charles might like to get behind an idea like this, and Charles, call me. I mean, the odds are very low that he'll do that, but
maybe he can become your partner. I cede my place to Charles if he decides to come on and have a weekly podcast with you.
Well, we can add another spot in here. We could do a 3-person panel. So
There you go.
So there's really, I mean, how many people are pushing this division? Like from the top, really? Like 1,000 people, maybe? Probably fewer than that. There are probably fewer than 1,000 people in the United States that are pushing, that are initiating these divisions. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't glom onto that and then do it themselves also. What I'm saying is that there's a very, very small minority of people at the very top, and I'm not talking about skin color or anything like that. There are very few people at the top that are pushing these narratives that divide, and we need to come together and reject those and come together. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It comes from a very elitist class. I don't think that there is a racial, certainly there's always prejudice, and there's a few bigoted people out there, but race is not the issue it's made out to be. This is class warfare, and it's a means to keep the middle class diminished as much as possible. Because when you have top tier and lower tier, that's your means of keeping the power, and I think that's what these people are all about. They want their power. And guess what? Most of them happen to be, if you want to talk about skin color, most of them happen to be white. And these are the heads of Fortune 500 companies. These are the heads of news media organizations, big tech, politicians. This is the driver of this, but it's unfortunate, like you say. I mean, people glom onto this. I know people very close, and they'll repeat this as if it's true. The lies and the talking points get told so much that it becomes their truth and their standard, and it's unfortunate. And so I think you're right. The only way we have to start rejecting this in a big way.
So I'm going to give you an opportunity to confess your guilt right now, Adam. So
I'm pretty
good
good
at
at
that today, or yeah.
Am I admitting sins or just confessing my guilt?
just guilt over being white.
Yeah.
And taking someone else's spot.
Yeah. No.
Because it's a zero-sum game. If you succeed, that means someone else can't.
Pretty sure I had no choice about whether I was, what skin color I was going to be born with. The same as, somebody who's black or, born in a different country. They pretty much have no choice. I think that's pretty scientific, right? And therefore, how can I be responsible for pure chance?
You're anti-science if you don't agree with that. So getting back to this election law, we won't be able to touch on it very much, but a lot of people are saying this fight that's going on in Georgia right now is just it's a primer. Now, I want to make a note. I looked up primer, and that's how you say it. I thought it was a primer, but it's kind of something that is, preparing you for something else, for the HR1. And I may be using it in the wrong context, but forgive me. This HR1 is a bill that we mentioned before, and it does a lot of things that we were talking about, that those lawyers, they came and loosened up the laws before the election. It codifies those into actual laws instead of just being a judgment from the judicial, from the courts. This is actual law that would be nationwide. It's not just a statewide law. And I don't think that I'm not a lawyer and I don't know the Constitution that well, especially the very fine details, but it just doesn't seem like a lot of these things would be constitutional. So this is kind of a summary from the Heritage Foundation. See, those are some of the bullet points that it talks about. It seizes the authority of states to regulate voter registration. Okay, so that's just right there. you're taking away the ability of a state to manage their own voting rolls. Now, this is, of course, a summary from someone else. So I could be misconstruing this, and if I am, please let me know. Taking away the ability of states to manage their own rolls and the voting process by forcing states to implement early voting, automatic voter registration, same-day registration, online voter registration, and no-fault absentee balloting. Okay, that just opens up a huge avenue for fraud, and that's not good. Point number 2. Well, this is a collection of points. It just happens to be the second bullet point. Make it easier to commit fraud and promote chaos at the polls through same-day registration, as election officials would have no time to verify the accuracy of voter registration information and the eligibility of an individual vote, could not anticipate the number of ballots and precinct workers that would be needed at specific polling locations. Sorry for getting tongue-tied there. Third point, degrade the accuracy and registration lists by requiring states to automatically register all individuals, as opposed to citizens, from state and federal databases such as state DMV, corrections and welfare offices, federal agencies such as the Social Security, Department of Labor, Federal Bureau of Prisons, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It would register large numbers of ineligible voters, including aliens, and cause multiple duplicate registrations of the same individuals, and put federal agencies in charge of determining a person's domicile for voting purposes. This is all, and I think there are quite a few things besides those that are in that law that are very, if these are passed, then you can kiss goodbye to a lot of things that you know, voter security and things along those lines. It's very concerning. I would urge you to contact your senator, to contact your congressman, congresswoman. Tell them to vote no on this. This is very important, and I'm not giving it the time and attention that it deserves, and perhaps we'll do some more at another time. Now, a question I have is, how would citizen representatives help in this situation? Now, part of what we are putting forth is a new voting system. Now, there are two types of voting systems that we're talking about. When we help a senator or a representative get elected, they're going to have to know how to vote on the bills. So we're going to be creating an online voting system that will be secured by the blockchain and various other methods. And I think that same type of system should, and I think it will eventually, be implemented on a state level for national elections. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it will be something that we do. It would be great if it was. But if someone out there comes up with this type of voting system and is able to implement it, something that can be verified pretty much instantaneously, the votes, we can manage who goes in and who is on the voter rolls, and you have just this next level of security and trust that can come to these elections, and I think that's something that we should work on.
And I think one other, maybe you implied this in what you were just saying, but the ability for the person after the fact to go back in and look at the ledger and trace how their vote was actually recorded, right? That they could see, oh yeah, it hasn't been corrupted in any way. And when that transfer of information it went as I voted for XYZ. Something along those lines could be some of the technology that's introduced with this.
Yes, that's exactly true. And so, because you want to be able to tell, like, I voted several times before. I can check to see if I've voted, I think, but I can't. They don't keep track. At least they don't link my vote to how I voted. Or am I wrong?
Yeah.
Is my vote out there? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, can you see your ballot Can they show that it wasn't tampered with or something like that? I mean, there are a lot of different ways we could accomplish this, but I think the idea that the voter could feel secure, hey, my vote went where it was supposed to, I voted and it was counted, and I think the system itself could incorporate a lot of that security detail so that voters feel confident after an election. Well, at least I checked my vote. I know my vote went.
That's true, and this is going to be a long road. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. There may already be solutions out there that are off the shelf that we can implement. I don't know. This is a big deal, and I think that once people start to see this is inevitable. This type of blockchain voting, because I was listening to a podcast with Tim Ferriss and the inventor of Ethereum, which is the second main cryptocurrency out there. And he mentioned voting specifically as part of something that could be brought forth with Ethereum, which is it's a kind of a more of a programmable cryptocurrency rather than separate from Bitcoin. And so the idea is out there. The technology is there. It's just a matter of putting it all together and presenting it in a form that is, first of all, if you get the masses to approve this and to demand it, it's going to happen. You can't just, you can only hold back voter resentment and anger for so long. So, Adam, can you give us your closing thoughts?
I was just going to add that, a lot of this will come down to getting people comfortable with the idea of blockchain or whatever iteration blockchain takes. I think the idea of encrypting and making it uncorruptible, data uncorruptible, and in a decentralized way. But it's going to take some educating the public, because I think a lot of people do, well, I don't know what that is. That sounds crazy. And there are some legitimate questions around how, that technology and how you would accomplish that need to be answered. And so a lot of this will be education, and, even you and I are going to be curious about, okay, is this foolproof? Can we really implement this? Let's prove its viability. But I think, and then that has to be conveyed to the public so that we can get support behind it.
Yeah, there's so much that needs to be done. I think the number one thing, my son, he's reading Jordan Peterson's book right now, the 12 Rules for Success, or whatever it's called. It's the first major book that he came out with, and part of the thesis that he has there is you can't change the world unless you've got your own stuff together. So the number one thing that we can do is, and you as listeners, and before you try to change the world, is to get your own stuff together. And that means, to me,
does he say stuff?
Part of I don't know if he says that. There is a phrase that uses a different word that starts with S.
Okay.
But the idea is, get your stuff together. I mean,
I made you lose your train of thought. I apologize.
Part of it, to me, is having respect for people. Okay, if everyone had respect for everyone else, one of our mutual friends, Larry, his big thing is about having mutual respect for people. And if you take that principle out and you expand it out, it actually makes a big deal in a lot of different areas. If you have mutual respect for people, you're not going to demand from them that you pay a higher tax, or vice versa, so that your lifestyle can be supported, or that your pet project can be supported. If you have mutual respect, you're going to treat each other well. You'll treat other people how you want to be treated. It's just kind of something that I'd like to get people to take away, kind of a takeaway from this podcast today, is to have mutual respect for people. Charles Barkley's right. There's people in leadership, politicians, they thrive off people having conflict. If people didn't have conflict, then they wouldn't have any reason to go into politics. If there weren't laws and things that needed to be passed, well, then why would they run? On what platform would they run? And so with citizen representatives, we're trying to take away a lot of that incentive for people to go into politics. And that sounds kind of silly, because we do want somebody to be, we do want actual representatives. But it would be nice to have people who aren't in it for themselves. And it would be nice to have people who are in it who would like to represent the people. And that's what we're trying to do here at Citizen Representatives. My name is Tyler. This is Adam. You've been with us today. Citizen Representatives is available at citizenrepresentatives.org. We're available wherever podcasts are, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the major podcast places. We're available on Facebook. We're available on YouTube. Do an internet search if you can't find us. We would love to hear some feedback from you. If you feel that this is important to you, we'd like you to share. We'd like you to like the pages. And again, if you would feel that this warrants it, we would like for you to donate to our cause. Again, this is Tyler and my friend Adam with Citizen Representatives, and you have a great day.